Hi everyone, excited to see you here today watching this podcast episode. And today we have Lisa Quinney with us, team partner North Group, and for Real Brokerage as well, realtor, serving GTA and beyond. Very excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining. Excited to talk to you today, ask some more questions about your journey.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, the first question that we always ask, tell us a little bit more about your career. How did you end up in real estate? Do you love it? Do you not love it? And how have you been feeling so far?
Yeah, for sure. So I started my career a long time ago, over 15 years ago, in administration, working for a well-known brokerage with the intention of getting licensed and eventually transitioning into sales. But what ended up happening is I got a job working for a developer and was able to work in the field almost immediately. And I learned a ton. I had a lot of different clients that I was able to work with during that time frame. But the challenge is that at that particular stage in my life, I didn't have the skill sets required to build a healthy work-life balance between business and personal. And so I found myself 3 years in completely burnt out and really just craving the type of job where I could clock in at 9 o'clock, clock out at 5 p.m., and just leave work behind when I got home in the evenings. So that was a very, very long time ago. Since then, I've come full circle, and now I have the necessary skill sets to manage my business responsibilities as well as my personal life. And I am really excited about what's in store for my career having come full circle.
Amazing. Well, talking about skill sets, so tell me more about the skills that you believe you do need to have to succeed in the current market right now in the industry, knowing there's a lot of things going on, rates go up, rates go down, buyers hesitating, sellers hesitating. So what do you think is really important right now to have to make sure you succeed?
So for me, partnering with a team was non-negotiable because I recognized that when the market shifted in the spring of 2022, that the only way that I would be able to survive the challenging economic times and come out even stronger on the other side was with my current team, North Group Real Estate, and just recognizing that they have a lot of really concrete systems in place in which I could learn about and implement into my business in order to stay motivated and hold myself accountable during these challenging times. And the thing about real estate is that no two transactions are the same, much like the real estate market can completely shift from one day to the next, let alone 1 week or 1 month to the next. And so it became very clear when the market shifted that the best way for me to navigate through all of this would be to align myself with a group of professional real estate agents that are transacting and working in the business at a very high level.
Love to hear that. And I hear that is very good in terms of, also support that you get from the team. Just because I hear a lot of people, especially when you're starting out, you need to make sure you have people around you, with a mindset that will keep you going. And especially when you have some challenging times or, you're starting out, that's really important to have. And one thing that I did want to ask regarding challenges as well. So, um, apart from that, did you have a moment within your career when you had something significant going on and it was very difficult to overcome that, and you did, and that helped you grow? Was there anything, a moment like that that you may recall?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I got back into the real estate industry after taking a very long hiatus, um, I began my business during the pandemic. And so it was very, very challenging having to essentially learn the ins and outs of the business all over again via Zoom because my brokerage at the time didn't allow for us to work in our offices. And so, with that being said, I was thrown into a crazy um, new business when the whole world was shut down. And so not only was I having to, go through the changes that occurred since I was previously involved in real estate, but on top of that, I had to figure out how to navigate through all of the restrictions related to the pandemic. So that was really really challenging. However, it made me realize how dedicated I am to moving forward within my career because I think that it definitely would have been an easier alternative to just pack it in and do what I was comfortable with and familiar with, being heavily immersed in the health and fitness industry.
Of course, and I believe that, COVID had a great hit on everyone, and I guess all the industries out there. But with real estate, I can't even imagine what you guys were going through with all these restrictions and, and all the technology and how things change with technology too. As you said, Zoom. Did we even have Zoom before COVID? I don't think, like we had Skype or something.
I know we used it very
Yeah.
infrequently. And so there was definitely a learning curve pertaining to all of that. And then also, just adapting to having your business, your personal life, your family, your socialization all within the same environment. So all of those different areas of my life at that time were overlapping and it became extremely overwhelming. But um, as I said before, the fact that I was able to continue moving forward with my business in spite of all of the challenges that were coming my way really reaffirmed that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then when everything started opening up again and we didn't have the same restrictions with regards to hosting open houses, for instance, or um, showing properties if we had a listing on the market because sellers were a lot more comfortable, buyers were a lot more comfortable getting together in person. Things really, really picked up in my business, and it was very exciting. It was also at a time when you could borrow money at such a minimal cost, and so there was a lot of activity in the market. Which was a huge confidence booster as I was coming out of all things related to the pandemic, right up until the market shifted in the spring of 2022. So I think that there have definitely been a lot of obstacles that I have had to overcome since I got licensed again in January of 2021. But I'm so grateful that I took the time to work as a solo agent for the beginning of my career. I was working on my own for well over a year. And without that experience, I don't think I would have the same appreciation for all the value that my current team has to offer.
Amazing. I think it's very important to see the comparison too. And for everyone out there, if you're part of the team, perhaps going solo at some point would be a great learning experience as well, just so you can, really understand what's going on and maybe potentially see maybe the value of coming back or maybe staying on your own. But definitely, I hear a lot of people that kind of move from like the team environment to solo, from solo to team. I guess it works differently for everyone. Everyone with like.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure it does. I mean, I think that this business can be very isolating as a solo agent, especially if you're not super busy actively working with clients. And that can be really difficult at times because it has everything to do with managing your mindset. And it's very easy to get caught up in the highs associated with doing a real estate transaction and putting a successful deal together, and the lows where you're actively searching for your next piece of business, when in fact, in order to have a much more stable approach to running your business that you have control over, you almost need to shift your perspective and instead get that dopamine hit from taking the daily actions required to generate business, in which that is what you have control over, as opposed to getting that dopamine hit when you succeed at putting a deal together.
So then kind of moving to the next question, I'm gonna skip a couple, and I wanted to ask more about mindset and those actions that you're talking about. So what kind of actions do you take perhaps every day or every couple of days that help you in your business, right? Because you said it's important to be consistent. And I think it's the same for pretty much anything that you do. You might be doing social media, you might be just, trying to do the lead gen. So is there any strategy that you follow for yourself or any specific advice for new agents or perhaps just a set of actions that you do every day to succeed in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I really need to prioritize my own self-care before I overextend myself in so many different aspects of my business. And so, what I like to do in the mornings is I like to start my days with gratitude and focus on three things that I am grateful for. And then I clearly outline three things that I need to accomplish that day. And I create an affirmation for myself. Beyond that, I get in a workout. So I have a gym at home, which makes it super easy. I don't have any excuses not to make that a priority. So I'll do my workout first thing in the morning. And then once I wrap up my workout, I have a daughter who is in grade 6. She's 11 years old. So once I finished having some personal time to just focus on getting my mindset in a good place, then I wake her up and we start her morning routine together. So usually during that duration of time, I try to avoid taking on any working related requests. And usually it's early enough that there's not too much going on with business. And then after I drop my daughter off at school, which is usually around 8:30, that's when I turn my phone on and I tackle the beginning of my work day.
Love that. Do you have days sometimes when, you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, it's all falling apart, or maybe you can't find that piece of business at the moment. Have you ever experienced that? Because I hear, sometimes from people and even from myself too. Sometimes you just have a bad day. I don't know, you woke up and you're not feeling really motivated or excited or too optimistic. So do you have any days like this ever, or is it just me and some other people that I know?
Oh my gosh, I have those days more often than I would like to admit. But you know what? Let me rephrase that. I don't allow them to become full days, but I have moments throughout my day where I feel overwhelmed and defeated and um, sometimes stressed out. But when I start to catch myself in a negative state, I know that what is required is an immediate state change. So movement helps with that, going outside and going for a walk, getting fresh air and sunlight, or in the winter months, even like the extreme cold temperatures will change my state almost effective immediately. And so, yeah, like there are mornings when I wake up with my alarm and I just feel so exhausted. Like I would so much prefer to stay in bed for an extra hour and rest. But I know without a shadow of doubt, I always have a better shot at having a great day when I don't make excuses and get caught up in that negativity. I get up, I start my day, and I go through my routine.
I love.
So,
And I think it's, as you said, it's important to be consistent too with that routine, and it helps you too on your journey. Because again, even if you're not having a good day or a good moment, it's okay, and that can be fixed. For me as well, it's usually a walk or just get out to get some fresh air or go to the gym. So do something. Usually, like a physical activity though helps. But
Yeah.
yeah, love those tips. And I think for a lot of people, especially if they're starting out right now in real estate, it's important to hear that, because I'm sure if you're transitioning from like a full time to, you're just going to be on commission right now, you might be feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and you might have days like this when you do need some kind of a support or putting yourself in the right mindset.
It's so true. And you know what? Like, if you are in a negative state or you're feeling the overwhelm of not knowing when you're going to get your next commission check, energetically, the person on the receiving end of the phone or that you're meeting in person is going to pick up on that negative energy, and it's going to have a bad impact on the interaction. And so, as a new agent, specifically, your primary focus during the day is lead generation. And so, if you're approaching that portion of your day from a scarcity mindset, then the person that you're connecting with 1000% will pick up on that energy. They won't necessarily know what's going on internally, but they'll sense that something's off, and that will hurt your ability to build rapport and potentially do business with that individual. So 80%, in my opinion, of success in this business stems from your mindset. And the cool thing is that it's something that we have complete control over. So, the same way that we can spiral out of control with negative thoughts, if you have that awareness in place, you can very quickly change the trajectory of those thoughts and choose a more positive, empowering thought process.
Amazing. I think we are really aligned with that, with you on that, because I'm also the same way, and always try to promote that a little bit from a different perspective, not just like lead gen, but also like social, right? If you're trying to do some videos and you're not feeling right way, you're not in the right mindset, you start shooting your videos, people can sense it, they can feel it, they can see it in your videos. So like, don't proceed with that. It's not going to be good content. You need to prepare yourself mentally as well. You need to make sure you're in the right mindset for that action, because if you're not, again, it's not going to bring results. It's just a waste of your time. And I think it's really hard for some people to understand that. And even with mindset, I think it kind of, and I don't know for how long you've been feeling that's one of the main pieces in this business, like having the right mindset. But I kind of feel that, that just started recently when people kind of started realizing that. You see that more in news and content. But it's really good that you've been following this for quite some time.
Yeah, it was really like the missing component relative to when I was in this business almost 15 years ago, because I didn't have enough life experience and wisdom in order to prioritize my own self-care in the process of servicing my clients. And so I was working, 12 plus hour days, 7 days a week. I was exhausted. I didn't understand the importance of taking time to recharge. I didn't understand the importance of exercising regularly and how much control we have over our thought process. And so what ended up happening is I was just burning the candle at both ends, trying to meet the needs of my clients. And eventually I got to the point where I just had absolutely nothing left to give. And so fast forward to where I am now in my career, I recognize when I am approaching that stage of burnout, and I hit the reset button. I give myself permission to shift gears and to slow down. But then I also very quickly get back on track. And so I think that, to your point, with mindset now being a focal point for a lot of people, I think that it definitely came from all things related to the pandemic and the fact that we all had the opportunity to self-reflect, to slow down, and to, get back into our routines in a much healthier way.
Yes, and I think yes, it gave an opportunity to a lot of people to kind of reconsider the approach when it comes to work and understanding that balance between your life and work. Because for a lot of people, especially this pandemic, I think it kind of just disappeared. There was no boundaries, there was nothing. And it was really hard mentally to kind of go through that. So that's incredible. And I hopefully more people can hear this right now and will understand that like mindset is one of the main things when it comes to starting into real estate and proceeding with their journey.
Absolutely.
All right, so now moving on to next question. I wanted to learn more about your approach to networking. And as I understand, real estate is very much a relationship business. You connect with your clients, but how do you connect with clients? How do you not sound like a salesly person, right? Or how do you make sure that you stay in touch with them? But first of all, how do you connect with them, right? In the first place? Because you don't want to kind of show maybe perhaps right away that, hey, I'm potentially hoping to work with you at some point. You don't want to, come in with that kind of approach. You want to just maybe naturally connect with people. So wanted to see if you do have your strategy for networking, if you even, just even take that as an approach as part of your lead gen or not, or how does it even work for you at the moment?
Yeah, there's many different approaches. So for instance, what I do every single week is I map out my lead generation activities. And typically, what I like to focus on is three different components. And so, one of them being social media, another being making phone calls and or texts, and then the third goes between door knocking and hosting open houses. And so it really just depends on which category I'm focused on as to how I approach my lead generation and the networking aspect. So, for instance, with with social media, I try to concentrate on adding value to my ideal clients. So, whether it be on the listing side or the purchasing side, based on what I encounter with my clients while I'm working actively in the business, is what I will then highlight on my social media so that I can just add value at any opportunity. But what I've learned with social media specifically is that if you're targeting your cold market, for instance, then it's so important that you develop a trusting relationship where people learn to get to know the you aside from business. Because at the end of the day, if people like, know, and trust you, they're more inclined to work with you in business. And so I catch myself at times being too business facing. And I recognize that I don't get nearly as much traction when I am posting that way or creating reels that way or even stories. What generates the most activity is when I share little bits and pieces of my personal life. So I try to approach my social media with a combination of those categories. So typically, what I'm going to be posting about is either real estate, um, leadership, and personal development, health, and wellness, as well as my family. So if it doesn't fit into one of those categories, then it's rare that you'll see that on my social media. And that way, my messaging is consistent for the people that are following me.
Amazing.
So that's social media. Um, when I'm making calls, for instance, I just try to concentrate on a certain, like I'm intentional with what I'm calling about. So whether it pertains to a recent announcement from the Bank of Canada, like the announcement that we had
Yeah.
earlier this morning, or if I'm talking about a market update that the Toronto Real Estate Board just released. I just try to be really focused on what I'm connecting with people about. And then in terms of hosting open houses, it's pretty self-explanatory. In that case, I'm focused on the house that I'm representing and doing my best to not only showcase that house in the most positive light on behalf of the sellers, but also to potentially generate business from buyers who are not already aligned and working with an agent. um Door knocking, I find that like there's a lot of resistance that comes up initially because it's something that might feel a little bit foreign, but I find um that so many people are now working from home, especially coming out of the pandemic where they were isolated from a lot of people in general, that most people are quite receptive to having a brief conversation with me if I show up on their front door. And again, it just stems back to how can I add value? So yeah, that's kind of that's how I grow my network. And then aside from that, it's just talking to people in my community. For instance, when I pick my daughter up from school, getting to know not only her friends, but the parents of her friends. And so that extends out to birthday parties and extracurricular activities that she's involved with. And I find that if I'm interacting with people from a genuine place, I'm just asking questions about, what they're interested in, what's going on in their lives, real estate tends to come up naturally in conversation anyways. Usually I'll ask people about family, about their lifestyle, if they have any vacations going on, and then about work. And so usually when I lead with that, people will ask me the same questions in return, and then I have the opportunity to share with them that I'm in real estate.
And what's your favorite lead gen method out of like everything that you mentioned? They're all very different, right? From sharing your valuable content through social media to just even naturally connecting with people in your community. So, which one is your favorite, or maybe all of them?
You know what? It's so funny. That is a loaded question because it entirely depends on my mood that day. Like, I definitely go through phases where sometimes I'm a little bit exhausted by all of the interactions that take place in my business. And so, if I'm having a day like that, and I would prefer just to be in the comfort of my own home and a comfortable outfit, then I'll hit the phones, whether it be making phone calls or sending text messages. And then the days where I just need a change of scenery and I don't want to be at home all day long, then I'll go door knocking. And social media, it just has to be a constant all throughout because if you're not consistent with it, then it's hard to generate traction. So yeah, like it depends. I go through phases with social media too. Like sometimes I really love it and I'm active and I'm posting stories regularly and I'm doing like 2 carousel posts a week and I'm doing a couple of reels a week and it's awesome. And then I shift gears and I want to be more like people facing and not buried in a device. So yeah, it really just depends on the day, but I love that there are many different options to pursue because then you really don't have the opportunity to neglect doing your lead generation and come up with excuses because really that is what is at the core of your business. If you're not constantly building your network and interacting with people, then you're not going to have a consistent business.
Of course. And how do you balance that lead gen with a personal life too? Because I'm sure it was a lot of lead gen, and because of the core of the business, right? Like sometimes it's possibly you're gonna get into the weeds of like again, no barriers kind of right? Like between personal life and business. Do you have any strategies for that? Have you ever had situations like this one, maybe have a lot of like lead generation, a lot of business on a daily basis to kind of interrupt the personal life as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to get good at just prioritizing your time because if you are in offer negotiations, for instance, then that just takes priority and it is what it is. And so when it comes to that interfering with personal commitments that I have in place, I just explain that. So socially, what I started doing when I got back into real estate is I would make plans, but I would make sure to pre-frame it with, you know, as long as something business related doesn't come up, I will be there if that's okay. Like I'll confirm with you a couple of days prior because I'm not really sure what my schedule will look like in terms of my business this far in advance. And as long as you set those clear expectations with your family and friends, they're usually pretty reasonable. And then, there's certain social commitments that are just non-negotiable. So if it's Christmas, for instance, or if it's a family vacation that's scheduled, obviously that goes into my calendar and I build my business commitments around that. So yeah, like I really I like to time block not only for business purposes, but also for personal. And that way, like if an opportunity to go out and show houses, for instance, with a buyer client comes up, I just know that, I'm available on, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday for showings, but then I've got family time or personal time on the other evenings kind of thing, right? But you do have to be flexible.
Yeah, no, of course. And when, like, if we talk about numbers for lead gen too, is there, specific amount of time that you spend on lead gen every day? That's number one. And second, for example, you have a set plan for every day. You're gonna have like 20 messages that you send out. You're gonna go out and, speak to 20 people. When you do door knocking, do you have any specific plans like that? Or you just kind of do it and, you see how it goes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was going through a phase where, let's say, if I was making phone calls or texting, then my goal was to reach out to 50 people a day. And so, in the process of working towards achieving that goal, I recognized that that didn't always translate to having a minimum of 10 solid conversations about real estate every day. And ultimately, if I'm not having those conversations, it doesn't matter how many people I'm reaching out to if it's not translating into real estate discussions and or business opportunities down the road. So since then, I've shifted gears and now I prioritize having 10 conversations a day about real estate. And so sometimes that involves making 40 phone calls. Sometimes I can get it done in 20. It just all depends on the day, right? So, yeah, like if I'm making phone calls and I'm not getting the results that I want, then maybe I'll shift gears and start sending text messages. And if that's not working, then maybe I'll take it to social media and start reaching out to people that are engaging in my stories or my posts and slide into their DMs. So I try to be flexible, but every day I need to be having 10 discussions about real estate in order to achieve my lead generation goal. So I try to give myself a block of 2 hours, at least 5 days a week. And then, if I'm super busy working in the business out with clients, then I'll open up time on the weekends as well so that I can make sure that at the end of the week I've had 50 conversations every single week about real estate. My goal is to generate 3 appointments every week. And yeah, that's kind of how I go about my lead gen.
Amazing. So then there was something else that I did want to ask, and I was listening to you, and I think the question escaped me. So hopefully it will come back. Uh,
Yeah.
but I wanted to see regarding also the lead gen efforts, I believe. So you mentioned, so you have a time block for like 2 hours, for example, and you do it consistently, so that's perfect. So let's say you reached out to John and John didn't pick up phone at the moment, and then you sent him a text perhaps, and then he responded, you had a conversation. but he might not be ready to go to the appointment just yet, or there's something going on. So how do you follow up with John or all the other people? Do you have a CRM system that you use where you kind of manage all the conversations? Because I'm sure if you have a 50 conversations every week, and then like in a month that's already 200, that's a lot of conversations to have. So you do need to remember people, or you need to have that stored somewhere. So do you have a strategy for how to kind of managing that all, and also for how to follow up with people, just so you also don't sound annoying per se?
Yeah, for sure, I do. So when I was working in the business initially after coming full circle as a solo agent, I didn't really have that aspect of my business systemized. And so, although I had a lot of success in my first full year as a real estate agent, um, I was just kind of winging it. And I didn't have those systems to rely on when the market shifted and all of a sudden things were not as active as they previously were. And so that's when I got clarification on how to manage my CRM. And so what I use is called Follow Up Boss. And working as a solo agent, I made sure that I had all of my leads in my database, and I tried to categorize them to the best of my ability. But really, when that shifted in a positive way was when I partnered with North Group, because I was able to then implement the systems that they already had in place. So I've got my whole database organized into pipelines. So I've got A, B, C, and D. So A is someone that is going to transact within 0 to 3 months. B is 6 to 9 months. C is 9 months to 12 months, and then D is 12 months or longer. So that's more like my nurture category. And so depending on where my lead falls within those pipelines will then determine how actively I'm engaging with them. And so in addition to that, I have tags associated with each of my leads. And so, for instance, if it's someone that's going to be buying, then they'll be flagged as a buyer. Seller, they'll be flagged as a seller. So that way, if I'm putting together an email campaign targeting all of the potential buyers, then that email will go out to those individuals. The same applies with the sellers. And then I've also got, this was something that North Group had already implemented within their organization that I was able to then apply to my own business, is with different email campaigns. So I have one for market updates that goes out at the beginning of every new month. And then I've got another one for just like a hook email where I am trying to entice a buyer or a seller to step into action. And so that has a lot to do with emails that are being sent out, which North Group supports us with and is so incredible to use as a touch point. And then in addition to that, there's also phone calls and text messages. So I do predominantly all of my lead generation through Follow Up Boss, in which case any phone call that takes place with somebody in my database is then recorded and saved under their name. So at any given time, I can go back, listen to a message to refresh my memory, but I also update notes for that lead as well. And so, it's a detailed process. I like to do most of my lead generation in front of my laptop where I can just document everything real time. But sometimes what'll happen is I'm out on the road with clients and phone calls come through from people that I reached out to earlier that are returning my calls. And so I also have just a section in the notes of my phone that just highlights how many conversations I'm having over the phone, how many text messages, how many social media, DMs. And so then when I'm back in front of my laptop, I can update my notes and make sure that everything is current. So yeah, I also will flag reminders. So let's say I have a really great conversation with someone that's interested in buying, but they're not going to be ready to move forward until the summer. So then as we wrap up the conversation, I'll always try to book a strategy session with them so that they can be prepared as they go through the process of getting ready to purchase a property. But if I'm unsuccessful at booking a strategy session, whether it be in person or via Zoom, then I'll flag a reminder to follow up with them on a certain date and just have like a quick conversation to see where they're at. And I try, like, as I'm wrapping up a conversation, to provide the person on the receiving end of the call next steps so that when I do follow up with them again, I have a talking point as to how to initiate the conversation. So yeah, it's tedious, but it's so helpful because you end up talking to so many people that there's no way you can keep track of what's going on with everybody in your database if you're not taking notes and flagging reminders so that you can make those calls. And then they literally just all pop up in my tasks. So when I'm sitting down to do my lead gen, the first place that I will go is to my tasks and see if there's anything outstanding that needs to be dealt with. And then beyond that, I'll go to see all of the emails that were sent out and who opened those emails. And then I'll start making calls to the people that took the time to open my emails and have a follow-up based on that.
I think there are so many people that can really learn from that process that you have, and it sounds very comprehensive, but again, sounds also like it's very helpful as well. And if you're again either starting out or in business for quite some time, I also believe that like implementing the CRM system in your day-to-day activity is key, and without it you just won't be able to really run your business. You need to understand your numbers too, right? And what's happening. And also, if you ever decide to hire someone and you want to have an assistant or someone who will be consistently with you and supporting you, there is no way for them to know what happened before with a specific person and when you had a conversation with them. And if you do have like a system that something like what you have, right? You can definitely just hire someone and be like, hey, here's people that have been talking to, here's the conversations, like whatever you need to provide to them if you need to for whatever reason, or just for reference, or maybe they're sending out some follow-ups or details. You have everything already built in. So that's
For
my
sure. Because it's like, oh my goodness, when you're working on your own in this business, it is so challenging to figure out how to prioritize your time because there's so many different aspects to running this type of a business. And so what I found is that I was getting inundated doing administration. I was spending so much time designing my own marketing and then figuring out, who was going to print that marketing material, driving back and forth. And I was essentially putting my time and energy into um, aspects of my business that were important for sure, but not necessarily what was going to generate income. And so, as a new agent, you always need to lead with lead generation. And if you're not making that a priority, then you don't have a business that's generating revenue. And so I think like it's not fun, it's not glamorous to focus on that aspect of the business necessarily, but it is fundamental if you want to have consistency and you want to be generating revenue. And so now that I'm aligned with North Group, it's been such a breath of fresh air for me because of the amount of support that I get administratively. Um, Learning all of the systems that they've integrated, um, the accountability component, celebrating the wins of everyone else on our team, and then having people to connect with as we're encountering challenges is so significant. And all of that in place allows me to focus on lead generation without any excuses because all these other things are done. Like our operations team has a marketing department. They assist us with social media. Um, our operations team also helps us with regards to interacting with our clients as we're putting a deal together when a new listing is about to go on the market. And so it just frees up so much time, allowing um, allowing me to focus on sorry, my lighting just went off there. And there we go. So allowing me to just focus on lead generation, right? Like I have zero excuses not to make that happen. But I think like it's so easy to get pulled into so many different directions when you're trying to do it all on your own. And naturally, you gravitate towards what you like doing rather than what you should be doing, right?
Course, 100%. And I think a lot of people need to be honest with themselves regarding like what they're currently doing and what actions they actually make every day that contribute to their business. If you're currently designing Canva templates, then probably it's not going to generate revenue for you, maybe in some way, but not really. So you really want to make sure that you evaluate, reflect on what you're currently doing and how it's going to help with your business. But also with that, once you focus on those lead gen activities, I don't think you're going to be as overwhelmed with next month, like how much am I going to make next month, like what's going to happen. Like you are almost creating predictability in your businesses in some way too, knowing that I invest 2 hours every day in this, and I know that if I have 50 conversations, I will have 3 conversations appointments after that, right? So you already know, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. Of course, market, and there's a lot of things going on, but at least you're doing what you can do to get results. So yeah, no excuses for you to actually not to get results.
For sure.
Amazing. All right, so a couple more questions. Just wanted to learn more about your social media efforts. So I see you're actively growing your social as well. You mentioned that a couple of times. So do you have any advice for the agents that are starting out with their social media, or perhaps for the ways that they can actually grow their social at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of noise on social media, and it's important that you don't get sidetracked and that you are very intentional with how you use social. For instance, you want to prioritize concentrating more so on content creation rather than consumption. And so with that being said, you do need to be engaging with your audience outside of when you're doing your own posts, because that will help with the algorithms and getting your content out further. However, you need to be intentional with how you utilize your time. So I would say that's part of it. You also want to stay away from playing the comparison game. It's really easy when you're just getting started to look at what other real estate agents are doing, all of the success that they're generating, and comparing yourself as a brand new agent to someone else who's been in the business, sorry, working as an agent for 5 years. You can't do that to yourself at all. So I have a rule when I'm on social media, and if I catch myself playing the comparison game, then I know that I need to just get off social, change my state, and approach it again when I can do so with a better mentality. Um, and on that subject, it's so important to be your authentic self, because that's going to allow you to attract your people that you want to work with. And if you copy what other people are doing, or you try to be like someone else, then you're not going to attract your people, right? So I think, yeah, just try to just be yourself and focus on, what interests you, how you want to show up online, and be strategic about it. So I was saying earlier in our conversation that I focus on real estate related posts, health and wellness, leadership, and family. Like those are my core um, areas that I like to showcase. And just to simplify the process for myself, I just make sure that if it's not in alignment with one of those categories, then it doesn't go on my social feeds.
So a lot of people on social media that just starting out, they just started an account and they started publishing content. They kind of still figuring out their game and what they need to do. But from what I see, a lot of people give up really fast. And they published, 2 posts and they're like, well, social doesn't work. You know what? This is not for me. And I look stupid on those videos and it doesn't work. I thought I'm gonna get 100,000 views for my first video. Like I usually hear that, and I hear that from people, just they just started. So from our experience, like it does take a little bit of time to actually grow. Like it takes time for you to build that community. And as you said, it's important to align with the right people, right? Just so it's not just someone out of Europe that is following you, or you got some bots, for your account just so it looks good with followers, but you actually create a community that you're connecting with, that people will follow you, listen to you, learn from you as well, and you can learn from them. So have you experienced something like that as well? Or, have you ever had a thought that, what, I'm doing this, but it's not generating business for me at the moment, or maybe I'm not doing the right thing? And if yes, how did you overcome that?
Um, yeah, it's difficult, but it's like anything, right? Like you have to be willing to show up and go through that learning curve in order to get better. And so something that I've struggled with my social media is um wanting everything to be perfect. And that's so subjective to begin with, because it really boils down to the individual's perspective of what perfection would be. So you kind of set yourself up for failure when you approach it with that mentality. And so you really have to be willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's not easy to show up online, to get in front of a camera and start talking, especially when there's fear of being judged or not getting the attention that you want. And so you just have to get over it and do it anyways, and recognize that when you're having those feelings of discomfort, it just means that you're growing. And in order to work through that discomfort, you need to get into action in order to move through it and get to the other side. So it's not going to look perfect. You're going to try things that really suck until you figure out what really works for you. And so as long as you're prepared to go through that process, then it'll be okay. But I don't know anybody who has a strong social media presence that in the beginning stages of building their audience, they were super at ease and comfortable with the whole process.
Yeah,
With
me
experience and practice, it gets easier, but you need to be consistent. So I would say that much like showing up in your real estate business when it comes to lead generation, like it's typically a 90-day sales cycle. So you have to be willing during that 90 days to show up for your business as if you were going to be collecting a paycheck at the end of every single week without that guaranteed paycheck. And so the same type of mentality needs to be applied to social media, in the sense that if you're not showing up and treating it as a business, if your intention is to grow your business through social media, then you can't expect it to return in those ways. So, the Meta now has the business suite where you can schedule your posts ahead of time. So, things like carousel posts, for instance, you can schedule a month out if that's what you choose to do. And so, putting into your calendar that you're going to spend 4 hours creating social media content and then plug it into your platform so that all of those posts are then scheduled for the month, means that it's not something that you have to be meticulously focused on every single day, but then you can fill in the gaps with real-time stories depending on what you have going on that day. And then with Instagram Reels, for example, using trending audio is really helpful in order to get more reach. And so that's not always something that you can schedule well in advance, because the trending audio changes from one day to the next. So you just have to kind of be invested long term and be on board with like the learning curve required in order to get a little bit better and a little bit better with each passing day.
I absolutely love that insight regarding what you said for social media and showing up and like collecting your paycheck in like 90 days, right? It's so, so true. And I think in real estate specifically, that's like this was everything, right? It's like this was lead gen as well, right? And you're showing up today, so later on you can also collect the benefits of that. And for social media, 100%, we see that right now with us, with all the clients, it takes time and effort to build that in, but it's so worth it. You get so much benefit with that presence that you build. So thank you so much. That was incredible. And I really hope more people will hear that and they will finally understand that too.
You're welcome.
Amazing. Well, one last question that I have for you. I noticed that we're, I think, almost at 1 hour time, almost just the time flies. I wanted to see if you have one advice for the new agents that, just got into the industry, they're starting out, things are crazy and they're changing all the time, they're probably freaking out. So what is your one advice for someone who is starting out right now in real estate?
Oh my gosh, there's so much advice, but I would say like to simplify it, if you treat your business like a hobby, you can't expect to be getting paid as if it were a business. So in other words, if you're going to allocate an hour here, 2 hours there, take a week off, and then get back into it when you feel like it, you can't expect to have a consistent and successful business. But if you are in it for the long-term game, which real estate absolutely is, you need to show up for your business every single day, no different than you would if you were working as an employee for someone else's business. So, yeah, like it's tricky because when you're putting in an 8 hour day and you're not getting paid every week or every other week, um, it definitely can be challenging, but I promise you, if you show up for your business every day and you put in your time with consistency, the return will come.
I love that. I love that. And hopefully, whoever's listening to us right now will know that they will hear it and be like, yes, yes, I'm just going to show up consistently and we'll see where my journey takes me. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was incredible to have you here with me today. So many incredible insights. So excited to share that with everyone. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Looking forward to connecting with you hopefully soon, and hopefully we can do it in person one day. But very, very excited to share it with the audience so they can learn from you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would love to get together in person at some point as well.
Let's do it. Thank
Okay.
you. All
You're
right.
welcome.